Okay,
Here I am.
perfect. We're ready to go.
Hi. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Sorry for the little bit of a late start, everybody who's tuning in this evening. I'd like to go ahead and call to order our April 27th, 2020 regular session of the Auburn City Council. Amy, I think you have some notices to make here or some announcements to make.
I can just call roll at this time.
Okay,
Councilmember Mackey.
Here.
Amara.
Yeah, present.
Berlant.
here.
And Vice Mayor Spokley.
Here. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and lead that if you don't mind. If you would all please stand. And I think, Amy, do we have a flag that you're going to present on the screen?
Yeah, we use Councilmember Berlant's.
Oh, I like it. Perfect. Well done. Okay, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
For which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
for
with
liberty and justice for all. I don't know how those late night talk shows do it where they sing and everybody's in sync. We're a little off, but that's okay. Next, what I would like to do is to take a moment of silence in honor of Mayor Bill Kirby, who tragically passed away a week ago last Saturday in his honor. And Amy, well, actually, let's all please take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you, everybody. Next, what I thought would be most appropriate is for me to say a couple of words about Mayor Kirby, who has left us all, and give the council an opportunity to also speak if they wish in honor of Mr. Kirby. So I'll start off if the council is okay with that. Bill and I had a very unique relationship. We got to know each other very well when I moved into town. He was a member of my wife's Rotary Club, and got to know him through the city very quickly in some of the roles that I played before becoming a city council member at the city. He and I had this awkward mutual respect for each other, whereas I would always call him sir, and he would always get mad at me for calling him sir and said, "I'm Bill, you need to call me Bill." And that was our little thing we had back and forth. Obviously, with the tragic news of the accident and his death, the thoughts of all of the interactions we had kind of flooded back into my mind. Bill was nothing but passionate for the city of Auburn, and I'm not going to spend any time at all talking about any of the negativity. That man lived, breathed, and bled Placer County and city of Auburn. And for that, I am going to greatly miss the gentleman, whether it's his passion for the arts in our community here in Auburn, his passion for his profession, which he showed very often to the rest of us in the community, or his passion for his Placer Hillman. He was a very, very passionate guy with respect to the city of Auburn, and the contributions that man made to our city. If you look around town and take notice, you will see almost at every turn. So for that, Bill, I thank you. Rest in peace, my friend. I will miss you greatly. And with that, I'll pass the mic over to Councilman Berlant.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I echo those same thoughts, and even with some time passing here, I'm still pretty speechless at the tragic ending for him. But any tragedy allows you to take an opportunity to kind of reflect back on somebody's life. And I had forgotten really just how many accomplishments he had made to our community. Now, for those of you who don't know, I actually knew Bill since I was a kid. When he was a leader in Little League, and I played baseball. My father was a coach, and the Bill I remember as a kid, the same Bill that I had the honor to sit, on the dais with. I just hope that we can remember this long list of contributions, whether it was youth sports, his time on working for the Hillman, and his love for Placer High School. He always talked about the Auburn State Recreation area and posted photos of him going down on hikes, the arts, medicine, flying, the airport, our region's history. The list goes on. And his contributions are things are something that at least myself, but I probably most residents could only hope that we would leave behind, especially in a city like Auburn. So I too, hope that Bill's legacy lives on with those contributions to our community, and rest in peace, Bill.
How about Councilwoman Amara?
Thank you. Hold on.
Hey, Sandy?
Okay, can you hear me?
No, you've got a really bad echo. I'm going to move on to Councilwoman Mackey for now. Maybe we can figure out the echo
Okay.
thing, Sandy.
Thank you. I'll work on that.
Councilwoman Mackey?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Smokely. Just like everybody else, I've been struggling with my emotions because we have a bad reverb I'm hearing from Sandy. I
Yeah,
think.
it's coming from somebody who has this open in 2 different places. So if you have a
That
phone
would be
and a
Sandy,
computer
probably.
going, sounds
Sandy
like
might have that.
it might be fixed because it's not happening to me.
Anyway, I've been struggling with my emotions as well with the loss of Bill, because we were having a little bit of a disagreement. And looking back after the shocking event of his demise and the airplane crash, it seems so trite now and so trivial. And all the accomplishments that he had in the last 30 years will certainly be what is shown on him and make him shine, because he was an extraordinary volunteer. He was a mayor, city council member, a wonderful father and grandfather. All the postings of him with his grandchildren, I always loved and enjoyed that. And Bill's passing is a reminder to all of us that you have to tell people that you love them, and no argument's so important that you shouldn't be able to resolve it. Bill will definitely rest in peace knowing that he did so much for this community. And my condolences to his entire family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Mackey. We are waiting for maybe the return of Councilwoman Amara. Is she communicating with you, Amy?
Yes, she's on her way back in right now.
All right, there she is. Welcome back, Councilwoman
Sorry.
Amara. It's
Thank
your
you.
turn if you're ready.
I am ready. Thank you. I would like to say, I've had the unique opportunity here to know Bill for 30 odd years. I've known him as a family man, professionally. I've known him. He helped my family, my father. He's helped my children. I knew his children. My children grew up with his children. So we go way back. And I've always known Bill to be a very passionate person. And I love that about him. And he was always a person who, with his passion, would also put it to good use. He I guess the only thing I can say is that our city took advantage of his passion and his strong-willed character to get things done. So I'm honored to have sat with him on city council. I'm honored to have known him. He's done so much for our city, and I will forever miss him. He has been a great human being and a very dear friend to me. And I would also like to say, add one thing here, if I can get it off this phone here. Actually, the two children, Sarah Kirby and James Kirby, asked me to read this, and I want to read this quickly. Sarah Kirby and James Kirby would like to say the following. Our father, Bill Kirby, poured out his life, love, and passion into the community. It has been a privilege to be his children. He absolutely loved it here, the people in the canyons, and he lived his life in service to others. Serving Auburn was one of his great joys, and he was honored and humbled to share the days with each of you. You may recall he used his time at the December 2nd meeting when taking over the mayorship, not to focus on himself or his vision for the city, but to praise you and the city's staff and supporters. As he said, the community of Auburn is blessed and well served by the council, city staff, and countless commissioners and volunteers. When our father announced he would not run for re-election all those months ago, he said it with a smile and believed it was time for other dedicated and committed citizens to step in. There is no doubt that he leaves the city in good hands. It has been the honor of our lives to share our father with the Auburn community.
Thank you very much, Sandy, for reading that and your comments, and thanks to the other council members for their comments. Bill obviously will be missed in our community. The next item on our agenda is nomination and selection of mayor. And like to take a quick moment just to kind of reset things for folks listening in. Bill was pretty adamant when he got sworn in back in November before anything was going on, that his strong desire was to share his term as mayor with Councilmember Lant, and he asked me if I thought that was okay. I told him absolutely. That's very, I thought it was wonderful that he was thinking of doing that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask the city clerk to declare nominations open for the position of mayor. If I read your line, Amy, I'm sorry.
No problem at all. I now declare nominations open for the position of mayor.
I would like to make a nomination.
Yes, Councilwoman Morrow.
Okay. It is my pleasure to nominate Daniel Berlant to be our next mayor of Auburn. First and foremost, it's exciting for the city of Auburn to have such a compassionate, energetic, young new leader with bright new ideas that will serve Auburn well for the foreseeable future. Auburn's future is vested in our youth, and Daniel will pave the way for more involvement in our government from our younger citizens who will inject new life into our beautiful city. Obviously, us older city council men and women will continue to have an important role in Auburn's future, but people like Daniel, with his vision and conviction, are essential to Auburn's continued vitality, especially in light of the obstacles facing virtually every city in our country at this time. Daniel brings a breadth of experience for his new position as mayor, and this includes, but not limited to, 5.5 years on the city council. He's been the chair of the Greater Auburn Area Fire Safe Council, past president of Auburn Union School District, 5 years on the board, past chair of Placer County Air Pollution Control District, member of the Auburn Homeless Transient Task Force, a founding member of Auburn Community Service Day, And of course, he's a lifelong resident of Auburn. He attended local schools, including Placer High School, graduate of University of California at Davis, and he is currently employed at CAL FIRE for nearly 2 decades. And I'm very proud and honored to be able to nominate Daniel. So based on these qualifications, I hereby nominate Daniel Berlant as our new mayor of Auburn, effective immediately.
I will second that nomination.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Amy Lynn, will you please call roll call vote?
Councilmember Mackey,
Aye.
Amara,
Aye.
Berlant,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Spokely.
Aye.
Can we clap?
We can clap. Daniel, congratulations. I probably should have given you an opportunity to speak before we made the vote, but here we are. We made the vote. Please, the floor is yours, Daniel.
Well, I'm a little speechless at all the kind things that Sandy said, and this is a little awkward, seeing her and all of you through here, and it's a little awkward. But Amy has deputized my wife to actually do the official swearing in, since Amy is not able to be there, and neither are you. So I'm going to bring her in, and we will do the swearing in, and then I'll say a few things, and thank you guys. So let me push this out of the way.
Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Daniel Berlant,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
I take this obligation freely,
I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
I will faithfully discharge the duties of mayor
I will faithfully discharge the duties of mayor
in and for the city of Auburn,
in and for the City of Auburn,
County of Placer,
County of Placer,
State of California,
State of California,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Congratulations, Daniel. I look forward to serving with you throughout the remainder of this year. With
Thank you,
that,
guys.
we'll do the fairly unceremonious transfer of the guard, meaning we can't move seats, but I'm going to hand the gavel over to you, Daniel, to continue on with our meeting tonight. Congratulations.
Sure. Thank you very, very much. And Sandy, I appreciate the kind words. And I don't know if I turned red on your computer screens, but a little embarrassed, but humbled as well. And I'm humbled to receive all of your support, in the opportunity to lead this city that I've called home for my entire life. Auburn is a wonderful city. We have so much to offer: our history, to our public art, our vibrant old town and downtown, and the endless recreational opportunities that we have. This has been a tough couple of months for our community. I don't need to tell you. Like cities across the nation, COVID-19 has completely changed the way we live our lives. It's nearly stopped our local economy, and our continued response to this pandemic, along with its recovery, must be our priority. I believe our residents are hurting, our businesses are hurting, and how we bounce back from this emergency will define our city for the years to come. Just so you all know, I'll be meeting with the county health officer as well as leaders from our sister cities here in Placer County to ensure that we, the council, our city staff, and our residents are on the front end decisions that are being made that affect us all. There is no doubt that we've been through some tough times here in Auburn. The past couple of weeks, to say the least, but really the last couple of months. And unfortunately, these challenges are likely to continue for the months to come, maybe even for the years to come. But Auburn is strong. Let's not forget that we are the endurance capital of the world. And so we will get through this. And while a 100-mile race has no real comparison to the life safety risks posed by COVID, Auburn will endure. I know that, and we will finish strong. Going into this pandemic, we worked hard to make sure our reserves were strong. But with our economy at a standstill, it's going to be up to us, and it's got to be a priority for us to remain laser focused on our finances. On another subject, the weather is starting to warm up, and as great as that is, it means an elevated risk to fire danger for our community. And I'm proud that this council has made major investments in our fire department, and we need to continue to ensure that we're prepared for fire season, which is right around the corner. The bottom line here, though, is that this is a time of change. We're soon going to add a new city council member. We're in the process of hiring a new city manager, who in turn will hire a new finance director, a new public works director, and hopefully a new position to address economic development. So a lot of change right around the corner. And I know that the entire city council will agree with me in saying we are committed to making this change occur in a manner that better situates Auburn for the future. So, I'll end with this. There are so many things that make Auburn who we are and make this a city that I especially love. Auburn is endurance. Auburn is arts. Auburn is safe. Auburn is outdoors. I really believe Auburn is strong, and we will make it through this. So again, I thank you all for your support and the trust you've given me in leading us through 2020. So thank you very much. And since there's just a virtual gavel, we will move on to the next item. So our first item here on our agenda is agenda approval. This is the time set aside for council members and or the public for any item they'd asked to be removed, postponed, or a change in the sequence of the agenda items. The agenda will be approved by consensus of the council. So is there anything anybody would like to have removed? Amy, is there anything from the public on this item to remove?
There's not.
Okay, so with that, is there a motion for approval?
I move we approve the agenda as written.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with a roll call vote. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a person requests specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the motion to approve the consent calendar. Do any council members have an item they would like to remove?
No.
Amy, is there anything from the public?
There is not.
Okay, with that, is there a motion for the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
I'll
Sandy
second.
seconds it. I think we have Sandy right before you as the second. We need a roll call vote if I'm not mistaken. Amy, would you call the roll?
Sure. Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Spokley,
Yes.
and Mayor Berlant.
Aye. Okay, consent calendar passes as is. We'll move on to public comment. This is the time provided so that the public may speak on an item, that may speak to the council on an item that is not on this agenda. Of course, with this virtual meeting tonight, we've been accepting email and voicemail public comment. Thank you. Just want to take an opportunity, Amy, to thank you for your continued work through this kind of unique public comment process that we've been building. And I know we continue to strive during this new era of online meetings to provide more real type comments. So we will accept public comment via email throughout the meeting on specific items, but please do so ahead of time so that the clerk can include those into the record. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the city clerk to facilitate. Amy?
Yes, hold on just one moment. Okay, this is the public comment received for items not on the agenda. And that was it. We just received that one.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. We'll go ahead and move on then. I'm sorry, I apologize. First meeting. Is there anybody on the council that would like to make a public comment? My apologies. Yeah, go ahead, Vice Mayor Spokley.
Thank you, Mayor Bryant. I want to just make a quick comment following up some of the comments made by Mayor Berlant related to the COVID situation. The shuttering of our local economy is devastating. I'm a business person. I'm dealing with the same things that our local businesses are dealing with. I just want to make the plea to anybody in our region who knows and loves our local businesses to please go visit them, particularly the restaurants and the brew pubs. They're open. They are doing curbside pickup, and they are very happy to see people. My wife and I have been frequenting folks as often as we can, and they're so happy to see us and see any of us. So if you have the ability to get out safely with your face mask, please go patronize these businesses. And if you have the means, please tip them well. They are struggling like you cannot believe. And I, for one, hope that we as a community can pull together and make sure that our businesses, our local businesses, are there for us when we're on the backside of this devastating pandemic. So thank you very much, Mayor Berlant, for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I definitely echo those. Any other council members have anything they'd like to say? Okay, then we will go ahead and move on to council business. Item number 5, the Placer County Transportation Agency's amended expenditure plan. See, we are joined now by the County Transportation Agency's Executive Director, Mike Lucan. And I just wanted to mention, Mike, before we have you give your presentation for the rest of the council members, Mike's actually joining us today on his birthday. So appreciate you. I don't know if hopefully this will be a gift to you, but thanks for taking the time out of your birthday evening to join us. So I'll turn it to you with the presentation.
Well, thank you, Mayor Berlant and members of the City Council. I enjoy being with you all on my birthday. We will celebrate a little later with my family and also tomorrow night as well. So appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight to talk about the South Placer Transportation Sales Tax measure and the resolution that is required by state law in front of you tonight. Amy, do you want to allow me to share the screen?
Yes, you should be able to at this point.
Okay, yeah, I see it here. Hold on. So I have a short PowerPoint for you this evening. As stated, we're here to cover a resolution that is required by state law when a transportation agency within a county is considering a transportation sales tax measure. And that is regardless of whether the jurisdiction is in the proposed district or not. The state wishes that the county as a whole consider the merits of the expenditure plan, not whether or not to put it on the ballot or not. That is under the purview of the PCTPA Board of Directors, but whether the expenditure plan in that district is appropriate for the entire county. Let's see. As you all know, that we are, I don't have to cover this much, we are the PCTPA board. We're a 9-member board that conducts transportation planning and implementation in the county. We have a 9-member board that meets once a month. Council member Mackey is our prime member, and Council member Spokley is our alternate member. So we're here to you tonight, under, as the mayor has stated and others have stated, under strange circumstances and serious circumstances with the COVID-19 crisis. And that puts a different slant, if you will, on what we're trying to do. It has greatly impacted our program at PCTPA in terms of providing transportation. It's a unique challenge that we've never faced in our lifetime. However, we are probably likely to see the traffic congestion will return when we are able to exit shelter in place. It'll likely return very quickly with the increased use of private automobiles with a concern over safety. Sales tax funding is needed in transportation for especially in South Placer County now, as we're 9 years behind in terms of implementation and into the future as our county grows. This consideration this month is critical. You know, it's difficult to do in the middle of such a crisis, but what it does is it allows a PCTPA board through a modified, measured approach to implement this process at the appropriate time. We're under very strict timelines with the county elections department that we're trying to comply, but tonight's decision and the decision by all of the bodies within the county allows us to make a decision one way or another whether it's appropriate to move forward at this time or in the future on a transportation sales tax measure. And then lastly, probably this summer, we're going to be seeing some type of federal infrastructure stimulus program, which requires matching funds. And here's a case in point where had we had this plan and program and process, we would probably be able to better address the need for matching funds. And this is different than the American Resource and Recovery Act that was implemented during the Great Recession. It's likely this time around we're going to be needing matching funds for transportation and other important infrastructure projects. So what we're going to be talking about this evening, I mean, we do transportation planning for the entire county, including Auburn and areas all the way up to the Lake Tahoe Basin. But tonight we're mainly talking about the South County, and that's where the district is proposed to be formed. And we have a number of projects in the South County that we focus our expenditure plan on, those being the 8065 interchange, which we implemented phase 1 last year, the widening of Highway 65, a few remaining bottlenecks along Interstate 80 at Sierra College and between Douglas and Riverside Boulevard, and then Placer Parkway, which is another long-term, a much-needed relief of traffic for the South Placer area that extends from Highway 65 all the way over to State Route 99. We also within our plan and in our day-to-day business, public transit is a very, very important component of that. With Auburn Transit, your transit service being a vital part of that, but also Placer Transit and Roseville Transit. We have very, very well subscribed commuter bus routes. We have a 3rd track capital corridor project, which extends from Roseville to the Bay Area to allow more trains, but it is an attachment to the existing service, which links all the way to Auburn and provides a vital connection. We're hoping to grow that into the future. Another very important part of our plan and process is alternative modes. That's a fancy name for bike and pedestrian trails, and these are very much needed. These are last mile improvements that are needed to complement our other transportation improvements in the county and to form vital alternative routes for commuting and for recreation. So why are we kind of in the situation we are? And that is because in South Placer County, we need roughly about $3 billion in transportation improvements. And in the former years, we were able to capture traffic impact fees, which was sufficient enough to pay for transportation infrastructure. However, with the state and federal government increasing our amount of funds locally needed to be competitive with other counties, namely 25 other counties that have adopted transportation sales tax measures, we now have a gap of almost $1.25 billion. And the next slide kind of also mirrors that, where in the old days, 90% of the funding for these projects and then 80% and now 50% is needed in order to match these programs, and has created the gap and is the reason we are before the jurisdictions in the county trying to create a transportation sales tax measure. A lot of people ask us about SB1. SB1 is a critical component of our system in Placer County, our transportation system, but it is the principal means by which we fund maintenance. The state in their infinite wisdom, decided to address only maintenance with the gas tax for the most part, and public transportation and some pedestrian or alternative transportation programs. But it really doesn't give us any funding whatsoever for the expansion projects that we're trying to implement in the South County. Every year we go out and for the past 9 years, and we ask the public in the county as a whole, and also in South Placer County of late, is traffic congestion an important issue in South Placer? And certainly this is going to change with COVID-19, but traffic congestion for the last 9 years has been a top issue with our residents in the South County and throughout the county. So we're in the middle of this process, as we explained at the beginning, where we did an outreach process for the last 18 months when I came on board as the executive director. We got legislation passed so we could do a sub-county district instead of a county-wide measure to allow the voters in the South County to vote for the improvements and to tax themselves for this. And then we're in the middle right now of our board of directors considering placing this matter on the ballot. And so we are before you tonight asking you to consider and then approve an expenditure plan, not putting the matter on the ballot, but are we spending the money on the right things to be implemented in the south part of the county. So those things in that expenditure plan, and you have a resolution, and then you have an attachment to the resolution, which talks about spending money on these projects. And the $1.2 billion that is projected over that 30-year time period would be spent on, a majority of that would be spent on major highways and road programs, but a significant amount of money is going into transit and alternative transportation, and also a significant amount to those 3 jurisdictions and the roads that connect those two, the county roads that connect those two, to improve those roads within those 3 jurisdictions. Wanted to point out a very important part of our measure is the accountability and transparency and capping of our administrative costs. We've capped our administrative costs at 1% of the cost of the program, which we feel very assuredly that we can live within those means. We are a small staff, we are a small organization, and we intend to be that way for a very, very long time. There's no need for us to grow into a much larger organization, even with all the projects that we could implement with a sales tax measure. And then lastly, our board has taken a special means by which to make sure that these dollars are spent in the appropriate manner. And that is in 2 ways. One is to require a separate policy advisory committee, a kind of a planning commission, if you will, of our board of directors, which will be the 3 cities in the county within the district. That is the first measure. And they would report directly to the board, and in an advisory capacity. We would require an annual professional audit separate for the transportation sales tax program. And then we would utilize a citizens advisory committee, which is done many times for these types of measures, but one where the citizens 2 citizens from Rockland, Roseville, and Lincoln, as well as a citizen from the county, would oversee the audit and the expenditure of these funds. This is, and I know it's in very fine print, but it's in your packet as well, is our expenditure plan outlining those major areas that I indicated earlier. So we're towards the end of our approval process. We first went to Roseville, Colfax, and Rockland, and then to Loomis and the Board of Supervisors, all of which considered this expenditure plan, again, what we should spend the money on. And then and they approved that unanimously by a vote of 5-0. We are before you tonight for your consideration, and then we would have this. The City of Lincoln has scheduled their consideration on May the 12th. State law does require a majority of the local agencies in number to approve the expenditure plan, and then a majority of the local agencies representing a majority of the population approve the expenditure plan. Although we have met those conditions back on April 12th, it is our desire and our board's desire that all the jurisdictions consider and approve the expenditure plan, not just the ones absolutely necessary. It's important with a measure like this that we have unity throughout the county. The other thing that we included in your resolution, and it is separate from the sales tax, but a very important aspect of this, and this, although separate, our board and our city managers group and our county CEO group, of which I'm a part, has felt that it's very important to help jurisdictions that may not have the ability to do this type of funding mechanism with the sales tax measure. You still need dollars for your roads, and you still need to do important improvement projects in transportation in your community, whether they be transit or alternative modes or other measures. And so what our group has proposed to do is to shift some existing transportation dollars to the communities of Auburn, Loomis, and Colfax off the top of those LTF dollars that we get every year, and shift those to those jurisdictions if the sales tax measure is approved for transportation projects in those communities. We have a history of helping jurisdictions in transportation, unlike SACOG, which sometimes there's a fierce fight for dollars down in SACOG, and you have to spend a lot of money on applications just to get funding. Here in the county, we have a history of working together on projects, and we see this as another means to do that. We've shifted dollars. There's a couple examples in this slide. With Nevada Street, when Auburn needed those dollars, our communities banded together and shifted dollars to Nevada Street to assist. And then a couple other examples were with the Colfax Roundabout and the Lincoln Bypass, where dollars were not needed, and we shifted them away from those projects to other needs within the county. So the resolution that you have before you endorses the concept of that shift, and then later on we would adopt guidelines that would be developed on how to implement that shift. But it's essentially $750,000 that we would take off the top of LTF in the county and then redistribute to these three communities. We tried to create a formula that was equitable, that would allow some reflection of the size of the community, but would allow also the communities to have enough funding for a project in their jurisdiction. And so it was a balance of those two. And so we split this out on a percentage. Our recommendation is 40% to Auburn, 34% to Loomis, and 26% to Colfax. And here's an example from 2017, 2018 on what that would reflect in terms of additional dollars to your community. So in addition to the dollars that you get already, you would receive an additional $272,000, $272,719 in this scenario, if you will. But that would be for what we're proposing is for a period of 30 years, and regardless of how much LTF that you get, and those dollars fluctuate every year, we're proposing that you get $750,000. You share a $750,000 off the top with the other two communities who don't have the benefit of a sales tax district, at least until such time that you are able to do that in your community. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. I'm just going to go in order just to give everyone an opportunity. Councilwoman Amara, any questions?
Yes. Thank you for your presentation and happy birthday.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask a couple questions on the expenditure plan slide. You have the percentages, and I'm just curious, how did you come up with the percentages, and who did that? Was it a study?
Yeah, so let me try to share that here again. I did it once, I can do it again.
Halfway through.
So this slide. So yes, how those were developed is the county has what we term a transportation or a traffic model, and it basically shows what projects would have the greatest impact on traffic congestion in the county as a whole. And the two largest projects in the county would be the 8065 interchange, which is about a $500 million project. And then two bottlenecks on Interstate 80, one in the eastbound direction from Douglas Boulevard to I'm sorry, in the westbound direction from Douglas Boulevard to Riverside, where there's a neck down of a lane there. And then same thing in the eastbound direction from the interchange of 80 and 65 to to Rockland Road, which is primarily used by Sierra College students. And so the cost of those major programs, as well as the needs of local transportation programs in our community, really guided the amount of funds that were available to those programs. So it's based upon a need for those projects in the south part of the county. And then we wanted to make a significant dent in our needs for rail and transit and bike and pedestrian. So we worked very hard to, even though those needs are great in those other programs, we worked very hard to have roughly about $180 million set aside for rail and transit and bike and ped or alternative modes. That's essentially how we came up with those things. It was based upon need of our traffic model, which dates back to the, it goes all the way back to the 90s, but is very much needed today. And as I mentioned earlier, we're about 9 years behind because we weren't able to pass Measure M in 2016.
Okay, and so that takes into consideration that perhaps in the future, if you have an improved rail and transit program, there'll be more ridership, so maybe less congestion on those bottlenecked areas.
Yeah, it's some people ask me, well, Mike, how long are these improvements going to be able to address traffic congestion? And that's a very good question, because we can't build our way out of traffic congestion. We actually need everything. We need highways, we need roads, we need rail, we need transit, we need bike and ped, all of those in order to address congestion. But even so, in the future, we're going to be looking at things like autonomous vehicles and things, we can't even imagine at this point. And so we've built into our expenditure plan flexibility to be able to adjust this program if things change substantially. And then also on the funding side, if things change substantially, if we convert from a gas tax to a vehicle miles traveled type of tax program, that's a major change in how we do things. And this expenditure plan allows us to come back, and it requires us to do exactly what we're doing tonight all over again. We can change things, but we have to go back and request that each one of the city councils and each one of the board of supervisors allow adjustments to our program. And then if the adjustments are large enough, we actually may have to go back to a vote of the people to change it. But there's a process to do that, and we've outlined that in our plan. And so it has flexibility built into it, because we don't know exactly what we're going to see in the future. We know maybe, project maybe 5 to 10 years out, but that's probably about as good as we're going to get. And we've even created, I haven't mentioned it yet, the competitive projects program. That's again for the south part of the county, but that's also set up because priorities come up. So say we were, as a county, we're able to attract, the new Tesla facility for something that they're making that we can't imagine yet. We are able to actually carve out a portion of this if they were to say need a road or a off-ramp or a bike trail or a transit component for them. That competitive projects program could cover those unanticipated items every year. So.
Okay, thank you. And so, yeah, that was going to be my question. My other question is then, is there an order to the expenditure of money, or will it all occur about at the same time?
So one of the things our board has asked us to do is to get projects ready. And again, this was before COVID, but to get projects ready for implementation after, in early 2021. And so, and we're not, again, we're 9 years behind. So the projects, there's not really a priority built into the plan, but there's a priority built into the traffic model. And probably our biggest next project would actually be the widening of Highway 65 southbound. That's what we weren't able to address with phase 1. So southbound 65 from Blue Oaks to the Galleria would likely be our first project, and then our second project would be the I-80 auxiliary lanes projects, those bottlenecks, if you will. And then probably mixed into that some transit projects. We don't have great commuter transit from Lincoln to either downtown Sacramento or to connect to the light rail station. So that would probably be a third priority off the bat. Beyond that, it's based on need and changes at the time. So we don't have a plan to spend well, we do have a plan to spend all the 1.2 billion. We don't have a priority order beyond these first projects. We'll have to see how things play out after that and the timing of the growth of the county.
Okay, and so just to be clear then, this is a sales tax, or is it a gas tax? I'm a little.
It is a sales tax. It would be a 0.5-cent sales tax in the communities of Rockland, Roseville, and Lincoln only in their corporate city limits. And it would be for a period of 30 years. It would generate approximately 1.2, very conservatively, about $1.2 billion, which would cover essentially about half of the cost of these improvements. The other half would come from state and federal funding. So it's designed to be a matching fund program.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman Amara. Councilwoman Mackey, any questions?
I just have a couple of short questions because, of course, I've been intimately involved with this for the last 18 months or so. Hi, Mike. Happy birthday.
Hi, thank you.
I'm glad you put in this last slide, the one about the LTF funds. I just wanted you to explain to the council how you came up with the percentage split between the cities.
Sure, and I'll display that here again. Let's see. So the split. Traditionally, we distribute funds based solely upon population and lane miles. However, in this case, with these 3 communities, we also had to take into account that these communities have enough to do one, maybe 2 projects a year, or maybe to save up over a few years to do a larger project. And so we took that initial, population and sales tax only, and we pushed it down a bit to acknowledge that Auburn has, the largest population of those 3 communities, but also to give Colfax and Loomis enough funding to do a project on their own in their community as well.
So, Mike, you're saying that you didn't do it population based or road miles based. You just came up with a calculation based on need?
We started out that way, and then we added need to it. If we would have based it solely on population and lane miles, to be quite honest, the city of Auburn would have got almost all the money, and Colfax and Loomis would have got nothing. And
well, that's what I like.
Well, yeah, I know, but we try to help our communities in total in the community, and certainly we tried to adjust this a little bit for that. Now I would say these are not locked in stone. We're not asking you to approve these percentages tonight. That'll come back to the PCTPA board, and we can have an additional discussion on that exact thing. All we're asking you to do tonight is endorse a reallocation of LTF, and we just provided you an example of how if we had to do it today, how would it work? So if you think, you know, the Auburn ought to get 50% instead of 40% or 45%, we can have those discussions. Nothing is locked in stone tonight.
Yes, I just wanted to have that discussion at this meeting. So thank you very much, Mike. And
You're welcome.
that's all. That's the only questions I have, Mayor Berlant.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilwoman Mackey. Vice Mayor Spokely.
Thank you, Mayor Berlant. Mike, I just want to kind of pick up where Councilwoman Mackey left off. We're roughly, and I just look it up, not sure how accurate it is, but we're at 14,000 population. Loomis is at 6,800 population. Colfax is at 2,000 population based on the same service. And again, I'm not saying they're correct or not, but the allocation, I think, is brought into question a little bit. And I get that we all work together and you know, all ships riot, you know, a rising tide raises all ships kind of a mentality. We unfortunately in 2016 were just shy of making the cut to be a part of this. And I think our neighbors just to the west of us were also in that same boat. So the way that this measure took form was the South County folks, Rockland, Lincoln, Roseville, and for my community, and I was in support of the Measure M initiative. For my community, we lost out on a share of those tremendous sales tax dollars being created down the hill. We have a lot of folks who need to, based on what I said earlier about the COVID-19 thing, need to be shopping locally, but there's a lot of services that our folks have to drive down the hill to get. So those sales tax dollars are gonna, for this measure, are gonna stay down the hill. I appreciate what you're trying to do, Mike, with the LTF dollars and giving a little bit back to us. But I guess I would like to ask that we go back and relook at the allocations. Now, as you gave us an example, I think in your opening statements where dollars were shared from Colfax to Auburn. I get that, and I think that is a situation that would continue to occur. If I'm not mistaken, these dollars have to be allocated, and Mike, this is a question, I guess. Don't these dollars have to be allocated to specific projects? And if they're utilized in that project, then they're spent. If they're not utilized, are they available to share with our neighboring jurisdictions like Loomis and Colfax?
So LTF, or local transportation funds, you know, were created back in the early 70s by the Reagan administration, I think, you know, to essentially help fund transit. And then when transit needs are met, then it can be used for streets and roads for counties which have a population less than 500,000, which is Placer County. And so, yes, they have to be, you can spend them on anything related to transportation that is allowed under state LTF law, as long as you address your unmet transit needs first. And so we go through a process every year with your staff to take a look at those unmet needs, and then those dollars are used for transit and then converted to other uses. So once you meet those transit needs, then it is up to the city of Auburn to decide what it wants to do with those LTF funds. We do not, as a PCTPA entity, tell you what to do with your LTF dollars. That is, once they're allocated to you, you get to spend them on what you want to spend them on, as long as they're for transportation. You couldn't use them to fund, you know, police or fire or something like that. But as long as they're transportation, they're usually good.
So Mike, and where in this process are these LTF allocations solidified?
So we get an appropriation every year that comes from the it used to be called the Board of Equalization. Now it's the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, and they allocate about $23 million this year to the jurisdictions within Placer County. There are some mandatory costs that we have to allocate for those. Things like we have to pay the county auditor to manage those funds. But once we do that, then they're allocated to each jurisdiction. And I think this example that we have up for you, you get about $1 million a year in LTF after that. So you would be able to, on top of that $1 million, you would have an additional, in this case, in this example, $272,000 to spend on what Auburn thought was the most important transportation needs in your community. Again, after you take care of transit.
Okay, I think you just touched on where I was taking too long to get to, but the allocation that we're talking about is outside of our normal, is that outside of our normal LTF allocation or not?
You would be receiving it outside your normal allocation. So you would be one of those costs off the top before it gets redistributed. So that 750 you'd get 750. What we're proposing is that you would get 750 off the top. So every single year, there would be 750 taken for these three jurisdictions. And then we go through our normal appropriation and allocation to each one of those communities, including Auburn. And then you'd get, in this case, 272 plus the $1 million.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Couple of quick questions that I had. You know, we hear a lot from constituents that why should we, and it's not a sales tax for us, but I'll just say it. Why should the citizens of Lincoln, Roseville, and Rockland residents pay an additional sales tax fee when developers are creating all of this gridlock? What do you know off the top of your head, and maybe this is a bit of an unfair question, what percentage of the projects are funded by development impact fees related to transportation already?
Yeah, so it's that three-legged stool diagram that and I can share it again here. So this diagram here, approximately, so we have in the south part of the county, just the south part, we have a $3 billion need in transportation. And so the development community, if you will, the builders come up with roughly about $2 billion, 1.95 to $2 billion in traffic impact fees. And it used to be, we didn't have this gap over here, this $1 to $1.25 billion, because but then the formula, this thing changed. It used to be 90-10 or 80-20. Now it's 50-50 to be competitive with these other counties that have already adopted these transportation sales tax measures. So that's where that gap is created. So you could say developers and builders and private and entities pay for 2/3 of the cost, and then which is actually the maximum. We in Placer County, at least in the south part of the county, charge developers the maximum allowed by law. There's a nexus requirement that you can only force a builder or developer to pay for the impact that they create. And so we charge, that 2/3 is the maximum. And then, but there's this gap that's created because we changed the formula. So that's where we come in and we have to fill that gap. And if we don't, we can't build these things, and we're kind of behind the 8 ball, if you will, right now, and in needing to do that because we didn't pass this measure in 2016.
So you know better than I, but these are self-help tax measures that allow us to fulfill our federal and state obligations for matching funds by collecting taxes inside the district or boundary. In this case, it's the South County area. We tried to do a countywide measure and it didn't pass. But many of our residents drive through the 80 corridor, through the 65, mess that's there. The project that was just completed was a huge help, particularly for folks that are driving down to Roseville or driving down to Sacramento or the Bay Area from Auburn. Can I ask you if you recall what was the PCTPA contribution to the first phase of the Highway 65 interchange project?
So let me start out by saying that was funded under the old program, which we can't do anymore. The funding for that was set up in about 2009.
Mike, I'm trying to get to a percentage of local funding that this tax measure would avail the county to versus, what was the match requirement for the federal and state funding that came through SACOG, some of it to the first phase of the Highway 65 project? Do you know up ballpark?
So off the top of my head, I would say that was about 20 to 30% local, and both the state and federal government contributed about 70% of the project, 70 to 75% of the project.
That's perfect. That was the point I was trying to make. Again, I think a lot of the Auburn citizens are affected by our major transit corridors getting in and out. God forbid there was ever a fire or something where we had to evacuate down Interstate 80. If we had gridlock at Highway 65, wouldn't take very long at all for it to back up to create huge problems for us. I think that the benefit that local self-help tax measures provide to allow us to be competitive in getting these federal grants like you've described here is a big benefit. And Daniel, Mayor Berlant, I apologize. I'm more comment here. So I will wrap. Sorry.
No, thank you. I know that you're intimately involved in a lot of these things in your profession, so I appreciate your good questions. I only have one follow-up question, Mike, from myself. So the LTF dollars, in your presentation, you noted that it's capped at $750,000 for this transfer proposal. What's the methodology for the $750,000?
So again, I'll go back to state that this is as an example, and so in your resolution, you're kind of blessing an example. But I guess you could say we looked at a number of ways to do this. One, we looked at the increment created with growth over time, and that increment meant that if we went that approach, that meant in some years you'd get zero, and in other years you'd get a lot. And it has relatively little to do with, certainly it's affected by the economy, but it's also affected by the actions that we take as a transportation agency. For example, if one year we decide to fund the South Placer Call Center for transit, that was a good example, because that one year, the next year we didn't have to fund that. It created a huge increment of LTF the next year. So that, I think, it would have been hard for the three jurisdictions down Interstate 80 to do that. On the other hand, in some years for you to get zero also doesn't allow you to count on that. So we tried to look for a reasonable number. Back in 2016 or 2017, right after Measure B, when we looked at this, the county was in the district, and we were going to shift over $1 million. So with the county, pulling the county out of it, we kind of arrived at a figure of $750,000, and that seemed to be reasonable to the city managers from the other cities. a reasonable amount to take so you'd get that every year, no matter what the economy did, you'd get that 750. So you'd get certainty, but certainty would mean you'd probably get less.
Okay. I appreciate that. And, I will just kind of echo that, understand that this is just a placeholder as far as the methodology for the percentage and the total LTF. And I had a conversation with our city manager today, and I know, the city managers are participating in conversations, Councilwoman Mackey, a member of your board, participating in some of the final decisions. So I do think that there's some room for review of that methodology. Obviously, I think Councilwoman Mackey went straight to the point, which was we want more. And of course, I think we all do, but I do think there's some valid points of the fact that, our residents do, go and have to buy products in outside our city within this new district where they would be supporting the sales tax. So there definitely, to me, seems to be a strong connection to our involvement as well. But Mike, again, thank you for coming this evening. I know we have some public comment. If you are sending public comment, please do so now. But Amy, I'll open it up now to public comment.
I do. I have two items or two public comments for this item. One is written and the other one is a voicemail that is about 3 minutes. So I'll start with the written public comment for you to read and then move on to the voicemail. Sorry, I have to stop the share for a second. I forgot to include audio. This one.
Hi, City Clerk Mike Garabedian. Please throw out the one we left for Saturday. And this is a new one. This is Mike Garabedian for Placer County tomorrow. We look at this as an opportunity for you to consider this plan tonight, as well as at your next two meetings, May 11th and May 25th, and hopefully with a public workshop on this in the meantime for the people of Auburn. That's because the Transportation Planning Agency was going to take it up this month, but it's changed to May 27th, so you have that time. The first thing we need to address are the specific ways that the city of Rockland changed its resolution. So you can look at your packet, page 32, and we'll start there. The second paragraph is stricken by the city of Rockland. The fifth paragraph, the last two lines after 5 years, were stricken by the city of Rockland. In paragraph 6, the key change, they changed the word counties on line 4 of that paragraph to say districts. And then finally on the next page, 33, the first and third paragraph were stricken. This all has everything to do with the expenditure plan. And Lincoln will be taking this up May 12th, as I think I mentioned. So things for you to consider are that the sales tax income is going down. How far down? How will this affect it? For how long? You can ask, can the people afford to have everything they buy now in our three big cities go up by 0.5%? Roseville already went up 0.5% in 2018 for that city's needs. The congestion is gone. How long? When will it return? People going to want to do something when there's no congestion? The economy is sinking and we need to be realistic. This is a 20-year-old idea that will not relieve congestion. All the peer-reviewed research shows that it's a waste of money. So What are the most important projects that the county needs? Certainly not $1.5 billion for the new Placer Parkway, a $500 million project. The I-80-65 interchange with 5 new viaduct bridges across the highway. All these other projects there, LA style, and the widening to 6 and 8 lanes of 65. Now the sales tax will cover $500 million of this package. And of course, phase 1 of Placer Parkway is for what? For Placer Ranch specific plan. Now, this was created by the passage of AB 14 last year. This is my final comment. And who testified against it? The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association testified against it. I sat next to them and testified against it. The bill divides our big cities from the rest of the county. This is urban versus rural Placer County, legislated, sponsored by our own transportation planning agency. Please keep this in mind. And thank you for this virtual opportunity to appear. Appreciate it.
That is it.
Great, thank you very much, Amy. Mike, I'll bring it back to comments and discussion, but I do have one follow-up question based on the public comment. Do any of the edits that Rockland allegedly may have made to the resolution, does that have any impact to our resolution and even to the entire measure itself?
So each jurisdiction can adopt their own customized resolution as long as they bless the expenditure plan in total. And they found, you know, some wording changes. You know, the measure is designed to address needs of the district, not the entire county. And so Rockland simply pointed those out as you know, I guess you would say, leftovers from the prior county-wide ordinance that, you know, that we need to focus in on the needs of the district. I would say that the city of Rockland in their resolution, they wanted to approve the expenditure plan, but I think similar to, but in a probably a different direction tonight. The city of Rockland wanted to take a look at the LTF transfer again, and so they actually they didn't vote for it, but they didn't vote against it. So they just said, you know, we need more time and come back to us for the LTF transfer. They're the only jurisdiction, at least so far, that did that. So those were the changes they made. They really couldn't make substantive changes to the expenditure plan. And neither can you. If you want to make some recommendations, whether they be to guidelines or to how we implement the LTF transfer, we would ask that you can add those to the resolution tonight, you know, and direct your city attorney and clerk to make those changes. That's kind of what Rockland did. You can do the same thing to express your concerns. So I'll leave it at that. So
yeah, thank you very much. So we'll do some comments and discussion. Vice Mayor Spokely.
Thank you, Mayor Berlant. Mike, the Rockland's in the district, so they had concerns about the small amount of LTF funds that were distributed to folks outside the district. That was their issue.
I would say they wanted more time to discuss it. I wouldn't say they necessarily had a problem with it. There were a couple council members that wanted to have more discussion about it. So that's why they chose to not, instead of not approving the expenditure plan, they felt that was very important. They wanted to defer the discussion of LTF to a future date and time.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Mackey, any comments or discussion?
Yes. I wouldn't mind including in our resolution approval that we would ask that it come back to us with approval of the LTF distribution as well.
Okay, Vice Mayor Spokely.
I'm sorry, Cheryl, just to follow up, and maybe Mike can answer this, or maybe you can, Cheryl. This is this LTF distribution. I mean, if we disagree with Rockland, for example, does TCPA put on the black and white jersey and referee
losing
the
you, Matt.
dispute?
I could answer that. Yeah, the answer is yes. Yes, it is the purview of the PCTPA board on how to allocate that LTF. We have a history in our county that we pay deference to our jurisdictions. We don't make changes to allocations or guidelines without input and agreement from our jurisdictions. But so I would say your resolution should request that Auburn be involved in the development of the guidelines for the LTF transfer.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I would certainly be in support of that as well. And one quick follow-up, and Mayor Berlin, I apologize, I might have missed this before, but one of the expenditures is that competitive project program that you mentioned, Mike, to us in your presentation. The project indicates that it's various county-wide, but I think I heard you say that it's only within the district. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, it's only within the district. That was actually a typo, if you will, that Rockland pointed out too.
And there's a few other various county-wides. Any expenditures in the expenditure plan are just for county or cities inside the district?
Well, with one large exception, and that is because the county roads that connect those three cities were left out because we had to take the county out because of the legislation. We had to put those back in. So those are the roads that connect Rockland to Roseville to Lincoln, you know, the Taylor roads, the industrial boulevards, the Fitterman roads, the baseline roads, the industrial boulevards. We had to put those back in. So those roads can be in and they comply with the legislation as long as they have direct benefit to the three cities that are in the district.
That's the local projects at 124 million?
It's a portion, a smaller portion of those would go towards those county roads. Most of it would go to the three cities and a smaller portion would go to those county roads.
If some of those roads connect up through Auburn, can we claim some funds through that? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
If we can find a correlation or a benefit, you know, and maybe I'll give you a better example maybe than roads, and that's transit. You know, we're going to be improving transit lines, which you know, certainly our inner city connect transit lines and the rail lines really benefit everyone. So I think there'll be probably some spin-off benefit to Auburn with transit, probably more likely than roads. Although as you pointed out, your residents are going to be using those roads.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go back to Councilwoman Mackey. Any other comments?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Councilwoman Amara, any comments or discussion?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, then I will go ahead and entertain a motion.
I also, if I can really quick, Mayor,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, Gary.
If there is an amendment for involvement of the city in the future LTF allocations, and that's what the motion will be, I have language to suggest for a new section 3 in the resolution. I can do that now or wait until.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and read us what you are thinking, and then when we entertain a motion, we can determine if that's what we want to do.
So this would be a new section 3 to the items that are resolved towards the end of the draft resolution. It would read, the city council requests that the city be meaningfully involved in future decisions regarding allocation of local transportation funding, LTF, and to renumber the current section 3 to section 4.
Okay, real quick, Mike, I see you nodding your head. No concern from you?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, council, anybody have any concern with that, or is there a motion based on?
Sounds almost exactly like what I was going to say, except for the 3.3 thing. I'll move by resolution to approve the expenditure plan for proposed transportation sales tax implemented by Placer County Transportation Planning Agency for the South County District, inclusive of the addition that Gary Bell just said.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If the clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Spokely,
Did he freeze up here?
Are you there, Matt?
So this is our first time having a little tech. Are we able to, Gary, to well, what are our options here as far as holding, keeping this item either open or taking a vote, holding his vote open and returning back to item 5 once he reconnects?
So it's perfectly fine to come back to this item once he's reconnected. There's a motion on the table which can stay there and come back to the item and just take the next agenda item out of sequence.
Okay. Mike, I think I don't want to hold you up from your birthday. I think you kind of have a flavor of what we're doing. You're welcome to stay with us. But otherwise, if you want to disconnect, that's fine. And we will return to this item once Vice Mayor Spokely returns, and we'll go back for a vote.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much for having us here tonight and for considering this item before you.
Absolutely. Enjoy your birthday, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Mike.
We will return to item 5 here momentarily, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and so if the council will entertain, 6 is an important item, but I think let's give it a few more minutes to get council member spoken back for that. So if the council is good with it, and Gary, if I'm allowed to, I'd like to move to, well, there he goes. That is joining us back. So once he connects to audio, let's go ahead and return then to item 5. We have a motion and a second. If the clerk will continue the roll call.
Okay, so I have on roll call, I had an aye from Councilmember Amara and Mackey. So now Councilmember Spokely,
Aye. Sorry.
Mayor
about that.
Berlant.
Aye. Okay, the motion is 5-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 6. This is the city council vacancy. Obviously, this is a sad item, but an important issue for us to discuss this evening, as having 5 members is an important balance of our council. So tonight we'll be discussing how to fill the vacancy behind the late Bill Kirby, whose term ends in November of 2020. So I'll turn the discussion over to our city attorney, Gary Bell. So Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and council members. There is a procedure established by state law for when a vacancy is created in elective office on the city council. It requires one of 2 things to happen within 60 days of the vacancy occurring. So the vacancy occurred on April 18th. 60 days is June 17th. So that is when the decision needs to be made. There are 2 options. The first is to appoint an eligible person to that seat. An eligible person is the same eligibility for running for the office. So that person must be a resident of the city, an elector, and registered to vote. If a person is appointed, that person will hold office for the remainder of the term, which is until the November election on the 3rd, and then until a successor is sworn in, usually in the first part of December. And the second option is to call a special election to fill the vacancy, and that special election will be consolidated with the general municipal election that's set to occur on November 3rd. So those are the 2 options, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the process. Oh, Daniel, you're...
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate that. I'll go ahead and open up to questions, and I'm going to work backwards this time. Vice Mayor Spokely.
Oh.
Maybe not. Councilwoman Mackey.
So I think that we should have an application process, a quick application process. I would say 2 weeks max, and then take the applications between now and the next council meeting or close after, and then make a decision at the next council meeting. That's a little more than 2 weeks, I guess. No, that would be 2 weeks, yeah. That's how I feel about it.
Councilwoman Amara?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. We do need an application process. I do think we have to put the word out that we're doing this, and try and have it obviously a very fair process, but you know, expedite it as quickly as we can. But yeah, I'd be in favor of application and appoint.
Okay, Vice Mayor Spokely.
Sorry about it, everybody. I got the blue screen of death in the middle of the vote, so don't know what's going on here, but we'll figure it out. Yes, I'm in favor of doing an application process. I am very much in favor of abbreviating it as much as the city attorney thinks is allowable. But I don't want this to drag on, but I do think it needs to be transparent in that we accept applications, we review applications, and from those we allow presentations at a council meeting, in my opinion, and then we make a selection. So that's kind of my thought on how the process would go.
Okay, I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and open up to public comment.
I'm just going to double check that I did not receive any public comment during discussion. We had not as of before the meeting.
And there
But
is
if I could just have a
yeah,
little
and there
bit of
is a
time.
little bit of delay here, so we can wait a few seconds here. While Amy's doing that and we're waiting for public comment, I'll just comment that I'm in agreement with the comments that were made. I think an application process, I think we have some pretty big decisions, as I hit on earlier, that having our fifth member a part of those decisions is critical. So I too am in favor of 2 weeks with an appointment hopefully at that meeting. So appreciate that. As Amy, I'm trying to look at her, but Amy, yeah, go ahead, Vice Mayor Spokely.
I'm sorry. And Gary, is there any, I'll just call them statutory requirements for advertising the position, or can we set that as a council? What can you share with us?
So so there are procedures for when you're filling vacancies on boards, committees, and commissions. It's sometimes referred to as the Maddie Act, and Amy's familiar with that because she follows that process pretty regularly. So there's already a procedure in place for getting word out and publishing notice and compiling lists and the notice of the vacancy. In the case of the elected office, though, there isn't that procedure in. Many cities do adopt their own procedure similar to what you're doing tonight, where there's an application process, materials are suggested, a deadline is given. Those interviews will occur in open session, and then a selection can be made either at that meeting or at a later meeting. As long as it's done before June 17th, you'll be within the deadline.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, last chance, any public comment?
I do have public comment.
Okay, thanks.
You guys can see it right now?
Yes.
Perfect. And that is all I've received at this time.
Great, thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Appreciate the comment. Any other discussion by the council?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just
go ahead,
step in
Bob.
one moment. From a logistics point of view, our next meeting will be on May 11th. Possibly if we could put a deadline just prior to the development of the agenda, possibly 5 p.m. on Thursday the 7th. If that works for the pleasure of the council, it would give us the opportunity to assemble and disperse those applications to you.
Okay, thank you for that. For everyone, I think that's about 11 days, but obviously that would, like you said, give us plenty of time, or give us the opportunity to logistically get it ready. So with that, I'll bring it back to the council to hear if there's a motion or any other discussion.
I have a question, Mayor Berlant.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm getting used to it.
We'll get used to it.
It's really easy. It flows pretty nicely. How will we get the word out? Are we going to do it like we do for other committees and commissions, as well as put it on Facebook or social media of some sort? Or how are we going to put it on our website? How do we plan on doing that?
Amy, do you have any recommendations since you post the other appointments, the non-city council appointments?
Sure, all of those things are possible. We have time to make it into the Auburn Journal as well and public noticing. We can post it on our website, Facebook, and get the word out that way.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
one other question. Okay, so then we get all the applications, we review them before the council meeting, and then we make the decision at the council meeting. Now, how do we do that? Because basically when the Board of Supervisors did it, it looked like that it was a done deal. They listened to everybody, and then each one of them said who they wanted. And don't you want to have the majority of the board in agreement beforehand? But we can't do that without violating the Brown Act. So I think it's going to be an uncomfortable situation. Is the point I'm trying to make.
If I could, and then Vice Mayor spoke, I'll bring it to you. Just so you guys know, I actually was appointed when I was on the school board the first year, and then subsequently when I was the president the following 3 years, each year we appointed a member. And so I'll just speak from that experience. It is very awkward. And I do think that, you know, I am in agreement that it should not be a done deal, you know, before we get into public session. I think my opinion, the four of us need an opportunity, and the community, to hear from the potential applicants, you know, all at the same time, so that they understand how we made our decision, and so that it's not, you know, a closed room, you know, potentially Brown Act illegal decision. You know, one other option that I would throw out there, even though again, I think the 2 weeks is a good one. And Gary, you correct me if I'm wrong, but would there be the potential for us to schedule and just throwing the idea out there, a special meeting for us to, you know, allow the opportunity for public comment and a brief statement and from each of the candidates, and maybe it's based on how many we get, and then bring it to our city council meeting for a final decision?
Absolutely. Yes.
I just throw it out to the group. That may push us back a little bit to do that, but maybe there's an opportunity where we're just focusing on, even if it's question and answers, besides just public comment from those applicants. Back to school board reference, we specifically, it was a Q&A interview done in public, but it wasn't just the applicant coming up, giving public comment, and then us deliberating in public. It included Q&A, so you could make an informed decision beyond just the application. The community could hear their responses. Then in this case, the school board, you know, we deliberated in public and took a vote. Any thoughts from the group? Yeah, go ahead, Vice Mayor Spokley.
Thank you, Mayor Berlin. I was going to suggest just that. I do agree with Councilwoman Mackey that we need to hear the comments, get a chance to digest the comments before we make a decision. And that could be done with a regular council meeting on the 11th, followed by a special council meeting on the 18th, or even if you wanted to do it later in the week of the 11th, we could. That to me seems like the appropriate approach. It will get an appointment as quickly as I think respectedly done. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I'll let you guys make a motion, but if that's the will, I can definitely work with the city clerk and the city manager, and we could schedule it, you know, on May 11th. So we're hitting our 2-week deadline, and then that same week work with everybody's schedule to get a special meeting for later that week for a final decision.
Okay, I'll make a motion
Yeah, go ahead.
that we take applications for the position of city council to fill the vacancy. And the deadline would be May 7th. Then we would discuss it at our city council meeting on May 11th. And after that, schedule a special meeting to choose that person.
I'll second.
Second,
I'd
okay.
like to just add, we're going to be advertising it. Amy, as we suggested.
Yes, I can have applications available immediately. Get it on the website, Facebook immediately, and work with Auburn Journal tomorrow morning.
And then they'll pick it up at the city hall. Is that it? Is that how it's with COVID?
I can have it available electronically. It can be mailed, whatever works best. They can contact me directly.
But Amy, just to clarify, the city does have an online application process. So in this situation, you are able to build it into the online place so that there is no public interaction to submit it.
That is correct.
Okay. I'd second.
Well, we have a motion, we have a second. So I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Mackey,
Aye.
Spokely,
Yes.
Mayor Berland.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes 4-0. So we look forward to all the applicants getting their applications in, and thank you to city staff ahead of time on helping to advertise that, and hopefully we'll get a good candidate pool. Moving along in the agenda, council reports. Item number 7, COVID-19 update. As I mentioned earlier at the meeting, I think it's important that our community and us as a council stay informed on the response and the recovery to COVID-19. So in talking to the city manager, he will provide us an ongoing report. So I will let the city manager update us on where we are with this pandemic. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. For this first and initial report, we're going to provide a brief overview of city operations and how they've been affected by COVID-19 over the last several weeks. Since early March, the cities of Placer County, as well as the county itself, they've worked in tandem to activate all of our emergency responses together as a team, as a single unit. So in that particular case for the city of Auburn, on March 20th, we moved to essential services mode. That means our police, our fire, and our utility services have remained fully staffed and fully functional since the March date. However, City Hall itself was closed on that day and has remained closed. Of our City Hall employees, we have 4 that are working full-time from home. We have 6 employees that are working on a rotating part-time basis in the city itself. On Thursdays and Fridays, the public can, by appointment only, access our development and permitting functions here at City Hall. They can come on in, drop off any applications that they require. We turn them around as quickly as we can, and all transactions are done by phone. Public Works is now fully operational again, working a little bit differently than they have in the past. Primarily, we're trying to keep them busy working on separated projects, also on projects of opportunity. One of the things that have always been difficult in the past is restriping parking lots and restriping roads. And with the lack of activity in the business areas, we've had the opportunity to completely restripe those facilities. In addition, at this point in time, we have no illnesses to report as far as all city employees. We've been very fortunate with that, and we continue to move forward with as many safeguards as we can for our employees at this point. I've asked both chiefs to respond now to say how and give you an idea of how they've had to respond to the COVID-19 as far as a change in operations. And so with that, Dave Spencer, why don't you start off with the changes that have occurred in the fire department itself?
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, appreciate the time to just share with you from the fire department's perspective. We've been monitoring our people daily for signs and symptoms of illness and self-reporting for any fever or symptomatic process. That's our first and primary concern, is ensuring that our staff is healthy prior to coming to work. Then with that, we have a very aggressive modeling for responding to emergent issues within the community with notifications that come from our dispatch center, identifying anything that is suspected with our additional personal protective equipment to keep our people safe. We have had some patients under investigation and patients of interest, of which all have been either non-positive on the COVID, or in one case was mistakenly identified and is not currently an issue within our jurisdiction. So those are some of the specifics that we're dealing with. We're continuing to work with our county incident management team to make sure that we have plenty of personal protective equipment through our OES partners. And we are also continuing to prepare, as you described, we're coming into our wildland season. And so our thoughts are continuing to think forward so that we're not caught unprepared when we start engaging in our firefighting operations throughout the state in the coming terms. So with that, that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Bob, do you want to continue with police, and then we'll do questions for both chiefs at the end?
Absolutely, Ryan.
Well, good evening, Mayor Berlant and fellow council members. Ryan Canan, the Chief of Police. So as the fire chief really highlighted, and we're working really well with our county counterparts as we navigate through this. The Auburn Police Department, we have no illnesses to report as it relates to COVID. Our staff continues to be healthy. We do have people with allergies as we're going through, so that's something that we are contending with as far as the personnel component. We did see property crimes early in April and towards the end of March start to have an uptick for us as it relates to property crimes. That was early on. Well, we did find out staff worked hard and made several great arrests. I think we've been highlighted in some of our media posts that we've gone out there. Since I believe about April 11th or so, we actually haven't seen any more theft from vehicles that we saw the spike in early on after an arrest of a chronic offender. One thing with staff, we don't have a large agency, so the goal is really to try to keep as many people healthy and reduce our footprint at the police department. So where we can work remotely with detectives and others, we've taken those steps, and we'll continue to monitor those really as we go through the next couple of weeks. We did start seeing some domestic violence uptick in there, in addition to a lot of the agencies across the state reported the same thing. Some things of note as it relates to the COVID, we've seen county and state inmate releases. Some of those were early due to the COVID-19 response. Auburn, the area of Auburn is expected to see less than 10 into the Auburn area, but it should be noted from the CDCR that 30% of the inmates that are being released are considered at risk for homelessness. So that's something that we can continue to keep in front of us, make sure we continue to monitor that. And it's a very big concern for all the right reasons to the community. So we will continue to keep that in front of us. In addition, the California Police Chiefs Association did a statewide law enforcement survey asking all the different agencies how much they spent up to this point with COVID-19, and they spent approximately $30 to $50 million on the COVID-19 response. So those are some pretty hefty numbers that we continue to monitor as well. And that's the end of report if anybody has any questions.
Great. Bob, did you have anything else?
That's the end of staff's report, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, great. I'm going to go alphabetically this time. Councilwoman Amara?
Yes, Bob, I have a question for you. I know you've been around town with visiting local businesses. Can you give us just a little overview on how the businesses are doing?
The businesses that are open, and primarily we're talking about restaurants, eateries, they're doing enough business to keep the doors open, but it certainly is not robust. They'd love to see, obviously, more folks coming in. I've also been working with several businesses now who are in the process of applying for care funds and are looking to reopen and are hoping to be able to fully reopen as soon as possible. We've really been working with them to walk through the process entirely with them. applying for the funds with the banks, seeing how the financing is truly working, how quickly they receive funds to be able to rehire employees, and then start to restructure how they work. And then hopefully once doors start to open, see how the public starts to react to them. So we have several restaurants and a couple retailers we're working with right now as they're going through the process. But everybody is very, very strained.
So just a follow up on that. Are you aware of what percentage of the small businesses were able to obtain the PPP funding?
They're in the process right now, and it really is very idiosyncratic. It's different for each one of them. Some are moving right through the process. We have some individuals who own multiple businesses in town, and they applied to different institutions, and they're getting entirely different reactions and timeframes with those institutions. So it's interesting to watch it kind of unfold. So I don't think there is a real good roadmap we can say that here's how everyone will get through the process. I think it's going to be very individualistic.
So yeah, I was able to speak to a couple small businesses, and they were able to obtain money during the first round. But that was the most difficult round. So now there should be more opportunities, we're hoping. I know that they had to go through several bank institutions to do this. And yeah, that'd be very good information to have at our next meeting to see what percentage are actually able to take advantage of the PPP plan funding.
I'll do the best I can to pull that all together.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilwoman Mackey.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate all the staff and the way they have stepped up and kind of rearranged their operations to accommodate this COVID-19. It hasn't been easy, I know. Bob, I want to ask, are we following the direction of the county health officer to the T? Is that that's what we're going to do, and that we're going to not reopen any businesses until she says that the county should? And is that what we're doing? We're following them in lockstep?
You know, since day one, we've been working together as a team, trying to keep as much open communication as we can, back and forth. And up until just recently, again, we've been having daily conference calls back and forth. We are trying to maintain a consistency throughout the county. They're all of us working together. And that consistency also helps the private sector. At least they know where we're all at. I think you see it as well as the rest of us. We're starting to see that frustration point, both from businesses being closed so long and the financial implications of that, as well as people just getting frustrated being in the house so much. Mm-hmm. So those conversations are definitely occurring with the county medical officer, and I think they'll continue on. But at this point in time, we're trying to work with them as consistently as possible.
We're getting a little pushback from citizens who are concerned about, and I'm sure you've gotten the emails too, are concerned about her being too rigid and too strict with her ideas. And as a matter of fact, I think nationally that's kind of happening right now. So, I mean, I know we have to follow somebody who has an idea of health in our area, and we don't have our own city health director. So we do have to listen, but I hope she's going to listen to some of the concerns, because it does seem like COVID-19 has flattened in our county. And I'm hoping that eventually but soon we'll be able to have our small businesses opened and have safety, manageable safety things in place so that people can start to go out and dine and do the things that will keep our small businesses open.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Swelpley.
Thank you, Mayor Berlant. The PPP loans for some have been extremely frustrating based on my own personal experience with my business, as well as with my communications with some of our local businesses, it's been clear based on my interactions and my personal experiences that those who are involved with some, I'm not going to classify all, but some of the biggest banks in our nation were extremely disappointed with those performances, including my personal company. What we found to work for us, and what led me to reach out to some of our local banking institutions, our community banks, is that they were much more on top of it than these national conglomerate banks that let everybody down as far as I'm concerned. So I guess that's a shout out to our local community banks. They were ready, they stepped up, they took care of their clients. And one of our local banks, one of our newer local banks in town, reported to me that they've already issued millions of dollars in PPP loans to local businesses. So kudos to those guys for being ready for this and being able to handle it. Shame on those national banks for letting so many people down. I guess what I'm most interested in is understanding whether we're going to follow Bob lockstep with our county partners on this. Are we going to try to figure out ways to get things opened up sooner than later? It's frightening to me what it's going to look like in 3, 4, 6 months down the road, because I'm fearful that a lot of our favorite local businesses won't be there when we want to go and patronize their businesses. So to the extent that you have your local meetings with our county officials and our city partners, that I think needs to be at the forefront of the discussion. Is what is our game plan for opening up? It can't be a switch, as we've heard from all of the national specialists on the subject. It has to be a slow progression. That certainly makes sense to me, but I'd really like to start to hear conversations about, yeah, we're ready. We've got a game plan ready. So as soon as the executive orders lift, or as soon as we get clearance from our county officials, we're ready to move forward with a plan. If that's a 25% occupancy or a 50% occupancy or whatever it might be, now's the time for us to be talking about how we open things back up, because I agree that the numbers in our county, while we used to be one of the higher ones, now we're kind of, falling back behind, and you can never believe, stats totally, but it's a fairly good sign. And it's time for us to start talking about what our game plan is for kind of opening things back up. I think we need to get talking about that now.
Happy to enter into those discussions. It's definitely needed.
Great, thank you. Bob, just a couple quick questions from me. Any additional information from Andy or even our contractors regarding projections on sales tax? I know when last time we met, Andy had provided some figures and we made some adjustments based on it, but what are you hearing as far as projections?
We just received substantial new information this afternoon. It's going to take us a couple of days to really fold that into a new projection, and we'll have that to the city council no later than the end of the week.
Okay, great. Yeah, I definitely want to continue to stay on top of what those sales taxes, look like. And obviously, we don't know when we're going to return back to normal. I'll just, just for everyone's sake, as I mentioned at the beginning, this week I will be on a call with our health officer, and I will express these same concerns. I assume Bob has shared the same concerns with his calls with the county as well. And so I will bring back to the council whatever direction they're going, and make sure that I voice what I think is loud and clear from you guys tonight, but I think from all of us, going out to all of our business. And Bob, one last question. You mentioned kind of walking the streets, and I know, between our boutiques and the gift shops and the restaurants, that's very visible. Any updates, or have you had any time out at the airport for some of the larger manufacturing or printing companies and how they're doing through all this as well?
We do, and it's rather interesting. It's really across the board. Some have been hit negatively just because of supply chain issues, that they can't fully manufacture that which they were previously able to do. Others have been impacted just by market demand and the reduction in market demand. And we have others that appear to be moving forward pretty smoothly still. So again, it's very unique how the different market impacts have been. And so even if a market is there and available, in fact, sometimes the manufacturer can't get the parts and the pieces they need to create their product.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, this was a report only. So Bob, appreciate it. Look forward to some additional information later the week to the council. And then let's plan to bring this back to the council for the public at our next council meeting.
Will do.
Chiefs, thank you as well. It's always nice probably when you don't have to get to any questions. So thank you too for joining us. Moving on to item number 8, city council reports. And obviously with a lot of current stay-at-home orders. I don't know if we've had many committees actually meeting so far. Does anybody have any reports for the city council? Yeah, go ahead, Councilwoman Mackey.
Well, Pioneer Energy is quite busy. We have been meeting via Zoom. We've also, we have an energy procurement meeting tomorrow with Zoom. But the important thing I want to point out is that we hired an executive director through Zoom interview a couple of weeks ago, about a couple of weeks ago, made him an offer. And so we believe we'll have a new executive director within the next month, probably or so, for Pioneer Energy. So that's the most important thing. We're also working on microgrids for the PSPS event. So, and I'll report back to you when I have more information on that. Okay. And that's about it for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Councilwoman O'Mara.
Yes, I just want to say I was invited by Bryn Kennedy, who's she's running for Congress, and she got a group together to talk about COVID-19. And if any of you want to come to the next, they're going to have some weekly discussions on this, and it was very, very informative, and it involved counties and cities within the area. So there was participating, to name a few, was there was someone from Roseville City Council, Calaveras, South Lake Tahoe, El Dorado County, let's see, El Dorado County, and let's see, and then there was Rockland. So it was very, very informative to hear what they're doing with regard to COVID and the impact that it has on them. And some of the ideas I can share with you, Mayor Berlant, I think they're wonderful, and you might want to participate in the next one, because it's wonderful to hear and collaborate across jurisdictions. And so I was very, very honored to be a part of this, and I can tell you some of the things they did at a later time, but there's a lot. It was a 2-hour meeting. And as far as ARD, they have been having some meetings, but they're kind of odd times, but I intend to kind of go in on some of those meetings, but I'll let you know next meeting.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman O'Mara. Vice Mayor Spokely, anything to report?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Berlant. We did have a SACOG board meeting last Thursday, and obviously it was done virtually through Zoom. It's very interesting to have a board meeting with 27 faces across the screen, plus all the staff members. So your gallery view gets to be a very big view at large board meetings like that. The one reportable action that I wanted to share back with our council is the SACOG SACOG board and committees have suggested some language changes as it relates to ATP funding guidelines that have kind of raised concerns for many of the Placer County members. And I believe El Dorado County is kind of in the same boat. They relate to grant funds that come back through the ATP program and how they're allocated and the categories at which different ratings are weighed. Largely, it's related to kind of disadvantaged communities, and they wanted to raise that benefit factor significantly to the point where most of our local cities, as well as Placer County, felt that it kind of disadvantaged us inappropriately. We had a good conversation about it. We agreed not to approve the item at the meeting and push it back down to the Transportation Committee. I believe it's also coming back to the committee I chair, which is the Land Use and Natural Resource Committee. So we're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to do what we can to make sure that we're not based on some guideline changes kind of aced out of some future funding sources. ATP funds, if you'll all recall, were a pretty significant source of funding for Nevada Street projects. So those are important funds for us down the road in the future. We just want to make sure there's a fair and balanced approach to how those funds are distributed throughout the 6-county region that SACOG serves. So that's it for me.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. With that, we will move on to closed session. Is there a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, if Amy, you'll take the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Mackey, Spokley,
Yes.
Mayor Berlant.
And aye. Okay, that will conclude the meeting. I'll go ahead and adjourn it. And council, if you'll want to return, we'll give it 10 minutes and join you in closed session. Yeah, go ahead.
We have a new Zoom link, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it should be in your email.
Yes,
Right.
there's a Zoom link. And I also just wanted to note for those watching the open session home, if there is any reportable action, it will be provided in writing and available from the city clerk tomorrow morning. Due to the teleconference or video conference nature of this, there won't be a report out directly after.
So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.